Hello friends, welcome for a new session of the chapter respiration. So in the previous video tutorial we have learnt about the transportation of gases, that is the oxygen and carbon dioxide. In my previous video tutorial we have studied in detail about the transportation of oxygen by blood, and in this video tutorial we will go for the detailed study of the transportation of carbon dioxide, and we will also discuss it that of the oxygen, means transportation of oxygen in detail along with that of the carbon dioxide. Clear? So let's start today's session. So we have discussed about the transportation of the oxygen, that is it occurs less than 2%, approximately 2% of the transportation of oxygen occurs with the help of plasma, whereas the rest 98% of the transportation of oxygen takes place with the help of the respiratory pigment which is present in the RBC, that is the hemoglobin. So today let's discuss in detail about the transportation of gases. Transportation of gases. So here gases means, as I have told you, this gases implies both oxygen and carbon dioxide. Okay, so we have discussed about oxygen and we will discuss today about carbon dioxide and relate these two, how the exchange of gases takes place and then the oxygen is transported from the lungs to the body cells, and from the body cells the carbon dioxide comes with the blood to the lungs, and exchange of gases along with the transportation of gases occurs coordinately in our body. Okay, so let's discuss about the transportation of oxygen. It is much easier. Transportation of carbon dioxide. Transportation of carbon dioxide is much easier than the oxygen. So why the carbon dioxide? It means it is the carbon dioxide is easier than that of the oxygen because it is highly soluble in water, because carbon dioxide is highly soluble in water as compared to that of the oxygen. So as carbon dioxide is more soluble or highly soluble with water, it has better chance, or it can easily transport with the help of the blood. Why? Because blood contains water, and the substance which is soluble in water will be soluble in blood plasma. Okay, so 7% of the total carbon dioxide transportation takes place with the help of the blood plasma. 23% takes place with the help of the hemoglobin. Okay, 7% and 23%. The remaining, that is 70%, the remaining 70% of carbon dioxide transportation takes place by bicarbonate formation, or as bicarbonate. So this is how the transportation of carbon dioxide takes place with the help of the blood. That means out of the total carbon dioxide, 7% transportation occurs with the help of blood plasma, 23% with the help of the respiratory pigment, which is hemoglobin, and the remaining 70% as bicarbonate. Okay, so this is how the carbon dioxide transportation occurs. In case of oxygen, what was the figure? Around 2% with the help of the blood plasma and about 98% with the help of the hemoglobin. Okay, this is about oxygen, and this figure is for carbon dioxide. Okay, so now let's discuss how the carbon dioxide get dissolved in the plasma, get associated with the hemoglobin, and how its transportation occurs as bicarbonate. So to understand this in detail, I have two different figures, and let's draw the first one and learn how the exchange of gases or exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs in the lung. That means the external respiration. So let's discuss the external respiration with the help of a very easy diagram. So if you draw this diagram, you can easily explain how the transportation occurs. So here we have the alveoli, as we are discussing about that of the external respiration. This structure is alveoli. Okay, so alveoli is rich with oxygen. It is oxygen rich. Okay, and the oxygen from alveoli comes out to the blood through the pulmonary wall capillary. So this is the structure of the pulmonary wall capillary. These are the cells. Okay, so these are the cells of the pulmonary wall. Between the alveoli and the pulmonary wall, it is the interstitial fluid. So here interstitial fluid is there. Interstitial fluid is there in this region. Okay, then pulmonary wall capillary. This one is the pulmonary wall. Then we have the blood vessel in which the plasma is there and RBC is there. So I can say here it is the plasma, and after plasma there is the biconcave structure which we call the RBC. So this one is the RBC, or the red blood corpuscles. Okay, so oxygen is rich in the alveoli. Let me write it in red marker so that we can know difference between the oxygen and carbon dioxide. The oxygen from alveoli diffuses into the RBC because blood becomes purified, or blood takes oxygen and become oxygenated at the lungs, which we call the external respiration. So the oxygen diffuses into the interstitial fluid, it comes towards the blood because of the partial pressure that we have studied during the discussion of exchange of gases. So in the previous class we have already discussed the exchange of gases. So now it is easy to understand that why from the alveoli the oxygen is going towards the blood, towards the plasma and the RBC, because the partial pressure is high in alveoli and less in the blood. So now the oxygen diffuses. Oxygen now enters through this pulmonary wall to the plasma, and from the plasma it reaches the RBC, where it combines with oxygen, combines with what? Hemoglobin. So it combines with H plus HV. H, hydrogen ion, and HV. HB combines with O2. HB combines with O2 plus it releases hydrogen ion. It releases hydrogen ion which is accepted by the HCO3 minus. It is accepted by the HCO3 minus plus H plus. It is accepted. Okay, now this HCO3 minus becomes H2CO3. It becomes H2CO3. Okay, so due to the presence of, by accepting a single H plus, it becomes H2CO3 and which become changes to carbon dioxide plus water. Remember, carbon dioxide plus water with the presence of a very important enzyme known as the carbonic anhydrase. So here the enzyme which acts for this conversion is carbonic anhydrase. Carbonic anhydrase. In the presence of this very rapid enzyme, its action is very rapid, so it is also called the rapid enzyme which converts H2CO3 to carbon dioxide and water, and this carbon dioxide comes from its higher concentration to the area of lower concentration into the alveoli. Okay, so carbon dioxide also present combining with hemoglobin. It also present combining with hemoglobin in the RBC, and it dissociates from the hemoglobin as Hb plus CO2, and this CO2 also comes to the alveoli. Okay, so here this process is related with one another. The amount of oxygen, when the oxygen is going to the blood, at the same time it helps in release of the H plus hydrogen ions which binds to HCO3 minus, making it H2CO3, which in the presence of the carbonic anhydrase dissociates into water and carbon dioxide, which comes to the alveoli. So as much oxygen the blood will receive, likewise it will also give carbon dioxide to the alveoli. So it is a related process. So it is correlated with one another. Okay. So most of the carbon dioxide that dissolves in blood plasma reacts with water forming carbonic acid. We will discuss how it forms carbonic acid and what will be the outcome. So here remember this much, that oxygen is rich in the alveoli, the partial pressure is higher, that is why oxygen diffuses into the blood, where oxygen binds with the hemoglobin, okay, and forms HbO2 plus H plus. This H plus ion binds with HCO3 minus, makes it H2CO3 with the enzyme carbonic anhydrase. It dissociates into carbon dioxide and water. This carbon dioxide comes back to the alveoli. So carbon dioxide comes in, oxygen goes out. So as the oxygen goes out, it helps the carbon dioxide to come in. So this is a related or correlated event that occurs during the external respiration. So we can say it, the exchange of gases during external respiration, during external respiration and exchange of gases, as I have told you that gases means oxygen and carbon dioxide. Clear? So this is the first diagram I was talking about, the diagram of external respiration and how the transportation of oxygen occurs with the help of the hemoglobin, and how the carbon dioxide as bicarbonate dissociates to make carbon dioxide free, and that carbon dioxide comes to the alveoli. Here in another way, the hemoglobin binds with the carbon dioxide and it also makes the carbon dioxide free so that it will come to the alveoli. Okay, so let's move on for the next diagram. And this is the next diagram will be of the internal respiration, where we will see how the gases, the oxygen and carbon dioxide diffuses to body cells. The oxygen diffuses to body cells from the blood, and the body cells give out carbon dioxide to the blood. So I will draw here a tissue or cell. This is the tissue, or we can also say it is a cell. Okay, so we have a cell. Here the tissue capillary is there. Here this is the tissue capillary. Okay, so this is the tissue capillary. This one is the cell. So we know that in the tissue or cell, the amount of carbon dioxide is more. So here the carbon dioxide is more, so it will passes to the interstitial fluid. This is the interstitial fluid. Interstitial fluid means what? It is the fluid present between different cells. So it is the interstitial space between two cells or a number of cells. If these are different cells, then the space between these cells is known as the interstitial space. So you can see here, this is the interstitial space, this is the interstitial space. Okay, so the fluid present in this region is known as the interstitial fluid. Here also the plasma is there. After this tissue capillary, we have the plasma, and after this plasma we have the RBC. Okay, so from the tissue, carbon dioxide diffuses through the tissue capillary again and reaches the RBC, where this carbon dioxide binds to hemoglobin, forming HbCO2, and the carbon dioxide also binds to water. The carbon dioxide also binds to water, forming H2CO3. It is a reversible reaction to that of the RBC in the lungs. So here H2CO3 forms and it again dissociate to form HCO3 minus plus H plus. Okay, so it is present like this. The carbon dioxide is now present in the blood cell, that is the RBC. Okay, so now this H plus will bind to the HbO2. It will bind with the HbO2, oxygen or oxyhemoglobin. By binding, it will separate oxygen from hemoglobin, and the result will be HHB plus O2. So let me write O2 with red. Okay, so oxygen is separated from hemoglobin and it will come to the plasma diffuses through the tissue capillary, reaches the interstitial fluid, and finally reaches the tissue or cell. So this is again correlated with one another. The more amount of carbon dioxide the tissue will give out to the blood, it will receive oxygen. So the carbon dioxide being higher partial pressure, here the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is high and that of the oxygen is low. So from higher concentration or higher partial pressure of carbon dioxide, that means from the cell, it will pass to the blood where it will diffuse to the plasma 7%, binds with hemoglobin 23%, as bicarbonate 70%. It came to the blood, bound or diffused to plasma, bound to hemoglobin, it is transported as bicarbonate and it influences the release of oxygen from oxyhemoglobin, and the oxygen separates from the hemoglobin and comes in to the tissue. Clear? So this is also a related process and it is very easy to understand. So hemoglobin here accounts for more than 98% of the transportation of oxygen. That is why here the oxygen comes into the body cells by separating from the hemoglobin. Another 2% is there in the plasma which also diffuses to the body cells. So this is the two different mechanisms of transportation externally, respiration externally in the lungs and internally at the body cell. So here it represents transportation of gases in internal respiration. So this diagram indicates internal respiration and the transportation of gases that are oxygen and carbon dioxide. Okay, so you have to just memorize or practice these two diagrams. One of the external respiration and one of the internal respiration. These two diagrams, making these two diagrams with the equations and elaborating these two diagrams will complete your answer and you will get full marks in the boards. And many different questions are asked from these areas in the medical entrance examinations. So be prepared. So another thing we need to know, carbonic anhydrase is the fastest enzyme. Carbonic anhydrase is the fastest enzyme which is used to separate carbon dioxide and water from H2CO3. So what is Halden effect? Let's see what is Halden effect. So this is all about the transportation, and Halden effect is also related to the transportation of gases. Halden effect. Oxyhemoglobin behaves as a strong acid. The oxyhemoglobin behaves like a strong acid. When it behaves like a strong acid, as more and more oxyhemoglobin forms in the lungs, it releases more and more H plus ion. So the more the oxyhemoglobin, the more the amount of oxyhemoglobin, the more the hydrogen ion. Okay, so hydrogen ion concentration will be more, and that is why it will lead to acidity of blood. It will lead to acidity of blood. When hydrogen ion concentration goes on increasing, the acidity of blood is also increased. This is called Holden effect. This effect means the binding of oxygen to hemoglobin makes the blood strong acid. The blood becomes acidic, or the acidity of the blood increases due to the release of H plus ion, which is known as the Holden effect. So the released H plus ion combine with bicarbonate ions. So this H plus combines with bicarbonate ions. It will combine with the bicarbonate ions, forming carbonic acid, forms carbonic acid that dissociates into water and carbon dioxide. So carbonic acid, H2CO3 diffuses, H2CO3 changes into H2O and CO2, means water and carbon dioxide. Okay, so that is the reason why more and more carbon dioxide released into alveolar air, more and more carbon dioxide released into alveolar air as a result of the formation of oxyhemoglobin. So more the amount of oxyhemoglobin, that means more the amount of oxygen binds to hemoglobin in the alveoli, from the alveoli to the blood, means in the lungs. When oxygen, more amount of oxygen binds to hemoglobin, the respiratory pigment, the more the release of carbon dioxide will occur, and this will result in the diffusion of carbon dioxide from blood to the alveoli. So they are dependent on each other. The more the oxyhemoglobin formed, the more the hydrogen ion produced in the blood, and they will bind to the bicarbonate ion, and that will result into water and carbon dioxide. And this carbon dioxide, or the release of carbon dioxide from bicarbonate or the bicarbonate ion, the carbon dioxide is released, and this carbon dioxide is now transported or diffused from its higher partial pressure, that is blood, to its lower partial pressure, that is alveolar air or alveolar sac or the alveoli. So it diffuses into the alveoli, and from the alveoli oxygen comes and binds to the hemoglobin, and as a result it gives hydrogen ion, which results in the release of carbon dioxide, which again diffuses to the alveoli. Okay, so it is a related, or it is a very well correlated, both are very related or correlated process. One is not independent of the other, both are dependent on one another. Okay, so about 23% of the total blood carbon dioxide is transported, loosely binding to hemoglobin, forming unstable carbaminohemoglobin. So 23% travels by binding to hemoglobin. 23% of carbon dioxide we are talking about. So carbon dioxide 23% binds with the hemoglobin, forming carbaminohemoglobin, which forms carbaminohemoglobin, and the formula is HbNH_COOH, HbNH_COOH. This is the formula of the carbaminohemoglobin. Okay, so carbaminohemoglobin means hemoglobin associated with carbon dioxide accounts for 23% of its transportation, whereas hemoglobin accounts for more than 98% of transportation of oxygen. So this is all about the interrelationship between the oxygen and carbon dioxide, their diffusion from higher to lower pressure, and their transportation, how the blood plasma, the hemoglobin, and how as bicarbonate ion the carbon dioxide transportation takes place, and how oxygen transportation occurs with the help of the plasma as well as the hemoglobin. So in the previous class we have discussed about the curve, the sigmoid oxygen hemoglobin saturation curve or oxyhemoglobin curve, how the oxygen binds with the hemoglobin and how the hemoglobin gets saturated after 100% binding of oxygen. That means 4 oxygen molecules are bound to a single hemoglobin so that it will get saturated. When 2 oxygen molecules are bound, it is 50% saturated. We have discussed about that in the previous video tutorial, so you can refer to that also. And here we have discussed the detail of the correlation between oxygen and carbon dioxide transportation. So these two figures you have to practice, you have to remember, and your answer should be focused on these two diagrams. Thank you very much. This is all for today's class. If you like this video, please hit the like button so that it will encourage me for making more videos for you. Thank you very much. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon. Thank you.